Hello, 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 everybody. Jupiter is about to move into the sign of Gemini, and it's a big effing deal, to be quite honest, because Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. So Jupiter has not been in Gemini since 2013. So in this video, I'm going to look back to when Jupiter was last in Gemini, talk a little bit about that, talk about why this time Jupiter's moving into Gemini is different because so much else has changed, and some of the major aspects. We're going to go through some dates and aspects pretty quick, but there's always kind of a transcript, and let me enable closed caption. There we go. So you've got that as well. So you can re-listen if you want the dates. Of course, I'll talk about them as we move through Jupiter's time in Gemini. But I couldn't be more excited about this. Oh, just realized I've got my backpack here. That's my boxing backpack. Because Jupiter's my ruling planet. So I get a bit excited about Jupiter in Gemini. So first of all, before we dive into showing charts, looking at the history, things like that, what is Jupiter? Jupiter is kind of like Santa Claus. He's abundance, prosperity, gratitude, generosity, optimism, buoyancy, exploration, and adventure. It's expansion of all kinds. And Jupiter was the traditional ruler of Pisces and is the ruler of Sagittarius. So, Jupiter is very related to faith and belief and confidence and kind of the need to have faith and confidence in life and self-improvement. Jupiter really desires to connect with something greater than the self. If you think of the signs of Sagittarius, that's the explorer, the wanderer and the wanderer with an O, and Pisces at its highest is kind of faith and higher love, that kind of energy. So, grace is another word for Jupiter, but Jupiter's also associated with natural law. There's a lot more to Jupiter than meets the eye. Jupiter's also said to be associated with luck, but also lawlessness. Jupiter can be a little bit over the top, but Jupiter's also associated with philosophy and religion because of belief. But I also find that Jupiter is very much connected with the natural laws of the universe. There's no agreement to how many natural laws there are, but I'm thinking about like the law of correspondence, the law of attraction, creative visualization is very Jupiterian, and Jupiter tends to work with Venus in if you do really deep um, law of attraction work or manifestation work, which is why I am about to start reading the book Mind Magic. So Jupiter's always also a bit risky. Like I said, Jupiter can be a little bit about gambling, taking a big risk, and that can sometimes be good and sometimes not. Jupiter is also associated with things like ritual, also wastage, but it's really kind of this expansive, magnanimous kind of energy. But if you think about Jupiter, where Jupiter is, everything expands in some way, and that's often associated or connected to your perception and how you respond to the energies. So when I'm going through all of this Jupiter in Gemini energy, think about where it is in your chart. I don't care what house system you use, you do what works for you, but think about where Jupiter is transiting through the sign of Gemini. For me, it transits through um, two houses, and that means it opposes two houses too, because I use porphyry. And you'll see that when I share the chart. But if you use whole signs, just use that whole house where Gemini is. I am not attached to what you use. And I think always work in their own way. And I think we choose whatever works for us. So anyway, let's go to the chart and quickly look back at Jupiter in Gemini before. So this is Jupiter moving into the sign of Gemini this Saturday, May the 24th. But let's go backwards in time just to give you some dates. So Jupiter moved into the sign of Gemini last from June the 11th, 2022, and went retrograde in the sign of Gemini from October the 4th, 2022 to January the 30th, 2013, and was retrograde from 16 Gemini to 6 Gemini. Don't worry too much about those things. And then Jupiter left the sign of Gemini on June the 25th, 2013. So it was almost exactly a year that Jupiter was in the sign of Gemini. Now then, I've taken some notes about the history of what happened back then. And Gemini really is a sign that is very kind of intellectual, very much of the mind, associated with science, associated with thought processes. Gemini, is very information hungry, very adaptable. So you can expect change with Jupiter in Gemini and some big changes. But the key word for Gemini is think. So some big ideas, if you think of that. And because it's an air sign, it is associated with mental processes and therefore science in many ways. All the air signs have that scientific, rational kind of element to them. Okay. So when Jupiter moved into Gemini in 2012, Uranus was back in Aries. Uranus is now in Taurus. It was Neptune was just in Pisces. Neptune's still in Pisces. Pluto was still in Capricorn. And Pluto right now is moving into Aquarius. It's only got 2 months where it dips back into Capricorn. So there's a lot of changes in other planets. And I don't know why my Zoom keeps doing that glitch thing on the video. It's been doing that for a while. It's kind of weird. I think it's this Gemini erratic energy coming in. But here was Jupiter moving into the sign of Gemini. The south node was in Gemini and the north node was in Sagittarius. So there was a lot different in the chart. And we really, we can't look back at a year's period and say, hey, everything's going to be the same, but there will be some similarities. So let me just tell you some highlights of the history for that period. So Kim Jong-un was announced or pronounced, or whatever you call it, the leader of North Korea. Assange was granted asylum by Ecuador on November the 1st of that year. In fact, while Jupiter was retrograde, scientists detected evidence of light from universe's first stars. On January the 19th, while Jupiter was still retrograde, the scientists also discovered calcium deposits on Mars. In February the 11th, Pope Benedict announced that he was resigning, leading to us really having 2 living popes for the first time in history, because then the next pope, the current pope, was elected. So that's Gemini twins. Isn't that interesting? In March of 2013, Xi Jinping was pronounced new president of China. So 2 current leaders that are often in the news became the leader then, Gemini 2. But then on May the 16th as well, so just before Jupiter left the sign of Gemini, the first human stem cells were cloned. So you can see there was a lot of discovery and science and themes of two leaders. So I'm not going to give an opinion about any of that. I just wanted to give you a little kind of mind nudge for what was happening when Jupiter was in Gemini last time. Now, it was huge for me. This is the period that I actually really launched my professional astrology business. It was at the end of 2011 or middle to end where I decided to study astrology more formally. And I couldn't find the date, but I think it was around then that I actually launched like my Facebook page, which for the longest time was where I got most of my clients from, as I launched an online, which is very Gemini as well, kind of in the airwaves business. So, that's my story. I again look back where Gemini is in your chart, look at that period and say, okay, what was happening then? Before I quickly move on to this upcoming energy of Jupiter in Gemini, I do want to say that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction prior to this time that Jupiter is entering, or to the last time that Jupiter entered Gemini, was on January the 4th, 2011, over a year before Jupiter entered Gemini. And Jupiter and Uranus actually met at 27 degrees Pisces then, which is interesting because that's close to where Neptune is now, but not that interesting. Okay, so fast forward. We have just had the first Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus since 1941. Okay, and it's at 21 degrees Taurus. And so if we go back to 1941, I did a whole thing about this. That was when the Blitz literally ended in the UK and it was a turning point year in the war, even if it did not end the war at that point. And back then, that was at 25 Taurus, and this one's at this conjunction was at 21 Taurus. And again, you can see that a lot of the planetary energies are in different signs. But fast forward to now. We've just had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. No Saturn in Taurus at this time as there was back then. We've had a lot of Taurus energy since, but it's been mostly the personal planets moving through. This was at 4 degrees previous, 21 degrees Taurus, which remember that 21 degrees because Jupiter's going to station retrograde at 21 Gemini. But this is much closer to this once in almost 14 years Jupiter-Uranus conjunction than either time. Okay, and this Gemini period is going to be different than before, but history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. There will be similarities. So all that being said, let's move on. So Jupiter is moving into Gemini on the 25th, as I said, and here's where I get my big list of transits, okay, so to kind of look. So Jupiter's gonna move into the sign of Gemini and will be there until, oh, have I even written the date down? Let me just, sorry. Let me go. I can easily, June the 9th, 2025. So you can see that it's just over a year again. And so on June the 9th, 2025, Jupiter will move into Cancer for a year, and we'll kind of start looking at the whole thing again. But just one look ahead, you can see that Uranus is not in the sign of Gemini yet. Uranus will follow Jupiter into Gemini, but not until Jupiter's moved out. But that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is still the start of these new identities, new inventions, new kind of discoveries, new scientific discoveries. And on that note, because I'm recording this just before this, I do have to say that I really suggest you watch if you can, A Brief History of the Future. I think it was free on PBS, or you can actually buy it on Apple TV or on YouTube TV. There's various places you can watch it. I've started watching it, but Jupiter is hope and hopium, and for the future and for innovations. If you want to feel inspired for what could come from this Jupiter in Gemini transit, especially followed by Uranus moving into Gemini, please watch A Brief History of the Future. It's protopian, which is what I've been talking about on my blog, about how we can look for the good that we're creating and really tap into that and create more of that with our language, with our perspectives, with our points of view. All right, so enough ranting. So Jupiter moves in May the 25th, and it's been in Taurus, which is kind of very steady, very rooted. We've been looking at our values and moving forward, and now it's time to work on our perceptions and our ideas and what we are creating in all those areas that I've talked about. But collectively, we're going to go through a few aspects, and like I said, we're going to go through them very quickly because I don't want this to be forever. So almost immediately, Jupiter will meet Sedna, that has 11,408-year orbit and has just moved into the sign of Gemini for the first time fully since the start of the Neolithic age, the Stone Ages, all that kind of, when men became, or humans, not men, became, started to form communities, started to till the soil, started to gather. Before that, they were hunter-gatherers from what we know. So from kind of working with the earth, traveling with the earth, eating what the earth provided, hunter-gathering, to actually farming, creating. And we are not going to go back from that. So we're going to develop on that. And that's why I would really invite you to watch A Brief History of the Future. It's so hopeful. Okay, so that's the first aspect. At the same time, really, I'm not going to get every aspect. Jupiter in Gemini will come up to trine Pluto, and Pluto is moved into an air sign and is going to dip back into Capricorn briefly later this year, but not for long. Really, this is massive transformation in invention and ideas, and this will happen for you as well. And massive transformation in community and what you are creating. Big change. Jupiter, Gemini is change, but it could be in your local community, it could be in your work, but it's all a lot to do with ideas, big and transformative ideas. Okay. I also like that this is in a trine with Black Moon Lilith, because there's no going back with all this kind of war on women and attack. Don't share memes about Handmaid's Tale and things like that, because what we are creating, with our words, create what you want. Don't create what you don't want. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. Then we move, really, Jupiter has a little bit of a quiet time, I think. So let me have a quick look. Yeah, apologies if I miss any minor aspects, but there's a lot to cover here. So then on, sorry, help if I do, on July the 9th, is that right? Yes, on July the 9th, Jupiter moves pretty quickly through Gemini for the first part till it goes retrograde. So by July the 9th, it's moved to 10 degrees and will sextile the North Node and move us more towards that future that we are creating as we were reborn under that eclipse energy. Again, this is fire and air. This is big ideas. On this, well, not on the same day at all, Jupiter, our next aspect, will quincunx another big player this year for other reasons, but I'll talk about that in a minute. On July the 18th, Jupiter in Gemini will have moved to 11 degrees and will actually trine Ceres. Ceres is retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, looking at how the structures of our society and our world are not feeding our needs. I love that. You know, this is 11 gateway. This is Ceres, who is, you know, really kind of working on our needs and asking us to think differently in Gemini to see how we can create the structures that feed our needs, both individually and collectively. And it's a quincunx aspect, so it's an aspect of adjustment. Okay, so we're going to make some big adjustments this year, adjustments in how we think and adjustments in what we do. Now then, we have a really big aspect coming up on August the 14th. But before I go to it, I do want to point out that just before this, Mars will hit Uranus. And that's kind of a big aspect as well, just before July the 18th. I'm not going to go back, but that will take place on July the 15th. But then Mars, because Mars is moving pretty quickly at the moment, will move to conjunct our beloved Jupiter. On August the 14th, Mars and Jupiter will meet after Mars has met Uranus, like breakthroughs, breakdowns, you know, new ideas, new projects. Let's start it. Let's get going. Mars will meet Jupiter and Mars will meet Jupiter in an opposition to the moon and in a square to Saturn in Pisces. That's a real opportunity to move beyond any limiting beliefs, that we can really create our vision and our future. I think this is really positive. There may be a bit of an element of some reality checks and hard lessons with Saturn in Pisces around what we believe and what we have faith in. But if we approach this properly, with the right mindfulness, you know, and saying, we've got this, we can do this, we can be the change we want to see in the world. This is a powerful conjunction on August the 14th. I'm really liking that one. So that's a real red letter day for me, just for Jupiter's transit through this sign. Then we really do not have any other Jupiter aspects majorly for a while. So I am going to whiz on, because I only want to give you the key dates. On October the 8th, Vesta. Vesta is, you know, our Vesta is our inner flame. She's also the flame of the hearth of the state. So on October the 8th, Jupiter has moved all the way to 21 degrees Gemini and is about to station retrograde at that degree. And if you notice, can't make this stuff up, honestly. It's kind of crazy. The moon is opposing again, like in the last major aspect. Jupiter will square Vesta in the sign of Virgo. Service, how we and of course the moon is in Sagittarius again, which is Jupiter ruled. This is how are we living by natural law, and how are we serving everybody. Now, this is a massive point because Jupiter then stations retrograde. Okay. So I'll show you. So that's October the 8th, right? That we get this T square with Vesta, our inner flame. How are we doing meaningful work that serves the greater good and ourselves, and so on? How are we living by our truth? How we have our perspectives changed to do that? Then that was October the 8th. The very next day, Jupiter stations retrograde with the moon still in Sagittarius, still square really to Vesta. It also makes a quincunx to Chiron, which is at 21 degrees then. Of course, you know, on my daily blog and things, I will look at some of these things in greater detail. But this is another reason why this is a really big station retrograde. Happens to be opposing my sun, but is that Jupiter is stationing retrograde right on the North Node and the Sun of Donald Trump and opposing his moon. Retrogrades are usually a reversal in direction. I'm not going to kind of give a prediction, but I'm going to say there's going to be a reversal of direction at that point. So, and it's on his North Node, so it's a reversal of the trajectory he was moving towards, and that's in his 10th house, which is his public place. So Jupiter is also judges and the law, incidentally. That's all I'll say about that. But so back to you. That's if you've got anything around 21 degrees of the mutable signs, which are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, this is going to be a reversal for you to going back over things. It's also in aspect to Chiron and to Juno and to Mercury, and Mercury is the guide for Gemini. So this is going to be a major turning point in our thinking. Okay, so that's just going to be a very big retrograde in how our part in the healing, being the healing that we want to be, is happening in all our relationships, in our thinking about balance, harmony, the scales of justice, to revisiting something about that. It's a powerful station retrograde, okay, and all of those planetary bodies are speaking to each other. And I love that it's actually in a sextile to Chiron, which is the key to healing as well as the wound. Okay, and in opposing Juno, which is, she was the goddess of women and children. So women's rights, children's rights, also maybe women's healthcare rights, and, you know, abortion. There's going to be a change in direction in all of those things. I kind of think that is adding to the fact that in my humble opinion, I think no matter what you think of them, I do think the Democrats are going to win big and really kind of reverse some of these decisions that have been happening. I've thought this for a long time, even before I looked at this. Okay, so, this is not just about the US, of course, but, and I'm not a predictive astrologer as such, but my intuition also tells me this. So, during that Jupiter station retrograde, just the aspects around that day and on the same day, Jupiter will actually trine Juno, and Chiron will oppose Juno on the same day. So all of that's happening at the same time. Then Jupiter will exactly trine Chiron on October the 12th. But then the next major aspect for Jupiter is that Jupiter will trine Chiron again. Okay, because they're kind of traveling together, and that is 3 days before the election. This is kind of saying we have to really kind of change our perspective, probably vote locally, so to speak, thinking of what's going on in the world, thinking of what will bring a reversal in the laws, even if, it's not your choice or whatever. So that's 3 days before the US election that's happening. Now then, on election day, and I can't help talking about this because these are the election things, and I will maybe look at the chart of the election later, but actually on election day, Jupiter kind of being the courts, the law, all that kind of thing, and in Gemini about changing retrograde, changing our perspectives, turnaround of events. Jupiter will oppose Pallas Athena. She is wise justice warrior. She is the wise owl. She's in Sagittarius, the sign of the visionary. Conjunct Venus, women, creativity, creation. Conjunct asteroid Lilith, which is talk to the hand Lilith. I'm not taking this. I'm not doing this. And women will come out in droves. Okay. That's on election day. You cannot make this up. And even to kind of add to that, Jupiter will then quincunx Ceres. And I really hope I'm right. You can all come back later and go, you were wrong. And I'll go, this is what it feels like to me. But I kind of feel like. So right after the day after election day, Jupiter's still retrograde, right? Going back over things, revisiting things, changing minds. Jupiter will quincunx Ceres again. Ceres is direct now, though. In the sign of structures, of how structures feed our needs. And not long after this, Ceres picks up and Venus picks up and Pluto moves back into Aquarius, and these three will meet at 0 Aquarius, creating the future. So as we move forward to the inauguration, which will be on January the 20th, but don't get too tied up in those details. I just see this as, wow, yeah, we are going to change our perspectives about how we see things and what we decide to do with our voice, etc., so on and so forth. Now, a month later, Jupiter, remember Jupiter was square to Vesta. Jupiter is going to come up and make a more supportive aspect. Because of course, if the incumbent, if sorry, US politics again, if the incumbent stays in power, they can get to work immediately because they do not have to wait for the inauguration things. And If, you know, Democrats win more seats, they can really kind of get to action. But a lot of it won't come till Jupiter turns direct, but there is definite signs of what they'll be working on. So Jupiter, again, still retrograde in the sign of Gemini, back at 16 degrees now. Now trines Vesta in the sign of justice, balance, harmony, the courts, you know, the scales of justice, new ideas. And again, it's still in aspect Chiron. Oh, this gives me such great hope about reversing some of these decisions or encoding things into law that should never have been left up to the courts, things like that. And then on December the 17th, Jupiter will actually quincunx Jupiter. Just and Juno, sorry. And remember, I said she is kind of goddess of women and children. So on December the 17th, Jupiter's now back at 14 degrees, and Juno is now in Scorpio, which is often related with sexual politics and control of women's reproductive kind of processes. An adjustment, a change. This really gives me hope. All right, I love my ruling planet. I love being ruled by Jupiter. On December the 24th, Christmas Eve, Jupiter is now back at 14 degrees and 1 minute of the sign of Gemini over here, and will square Saturn. Saturn has been retrograde, will be direct again by now. These are both about rules and laws and court, man-made rules really, and natural laws. Need I say more? And the mutable signs, they are change. And Jupiter is kind of writing and contract. Sorry, Gemini is also writing and contracts and so on. By January the 2nd, Jupiter will come up and make another quincunx to Pallas Athena, that wise justice warrior. We saw her show up once before. But as Jupiter moves further back in the retrograde to the number of the goddess, 13 degrees, Pallas Athena is conjunct the Sun and asteroid Lilith in the sign of the structures, and it's another adjustment and shift and change. This really gives me so much hope. All right, and I hope I'm So moving on a little bit now to January the 9th, Jupiter's going to come up and is going to trine Ceres again. Ceres in, again, the sign of our structures. So this is an ongoing theme. So 12 to 12. That one is not right. So ignore that one. January the 9th. That's Oh, of course, it is right. I was just looking at the wrong place. Ceres has now moved into Aquarius, the sign of future, the sign of new ideas, what feeds our needs, what nourishes us. Sorry about that little glitch for a moment. I saw asteroid Lilith there and got a little bit confused because Jupiter's still speaking to this lot, the sign of structures, but this is future. This is innovative new ideas. And Ceres is almost conjunct Chariklo, the space holder, the weave a new story over here in Aquarius, where we are headed. So that, to my mind, is new ideas. And this is also the sign of for the people. Okay, doing things for the people. So that trine is a lovely airy trine for new ideas too. Then we'll have the inauguration right after that. But I think really kind of the inauguration, because I do think the incumbent is going to win, or the incumbent party at least. This is not really about the president. This is going to be like, we are at full speed now because you have given us a mandate. The people have spoken, kind of thing. On February the 4th, Jupiter's going to station direct for the rest of the journey through the sign of Gemini. And Jupiter is stationing direct at 11 degrees of Gemini. Okay, still really in a trine to Mercury, which is the guide for Gemini, and Mercury is in sign of Aquarius, so ideas, new ideas for the people. Pluto is now solidly in Aquarius, not going back again into Capricorn. We are moving forward with these new ideas. Again, and look at this number for this. This is 11 degrees. This is a real kind of gateway number. And look at this, the quincunx again to Vesta, exact on the station, Vesta in the hearth, and in that sign of reproductive health, power struggles, power manipulations, things like that. The lovely Hecate, the goddess of the crossroads, is there. That's another adjustment to make as Jupiter starts to move direct and to really take action on all these plans. And I will say though, just maybe while Jupiter's retrograde, kind of bills will be released and announced and started to be debated and so on. And then when Jupiter moves direct right after the inauguration, things will really start to change and move forward. Okay. So we have no major aspects, Jupiter aspects. While Jupiter gets up to speed, Jupiter will be retracing their steps and building on, what all the stuff that's come up. And then Jupiter will quincunx Vesta yet again. And again, remember it, Vesta is our inner flame, but also the one under hearth. So February the 4th, they were quincunx. And then the next aspect is April the 8th, which is a year to the day since the big Aries eclipse. And the sun is at that degree again. But things are going to move forward. Jupiter's now moved to 17 degrees. Vesta's gone retrograde. And, well, this is all just speaking to each other, making some really big changes and adjustments around power manipulations and your inner psyche as well. That, there's some deep shadow healing going on with that at a personal level. Then on April the 10th, Jupiter will come up and will square that planet of our needs, both met and unmet. And Jupiter will square Ceres, and Ceres has actually moved into Pisces. So what feeds our need for trust and faith and belief? Or have we found, remember Jupiter was the traditional ruler of this. Are we finding some faith? Are we finding trusting the process that things are going to be okay is kind of working? Are we trusting the hopium and the sense of to go back to that program that I mentioned, that the future is going to be okay? I have complete faith that it is going to be okay now, to be quite honest. I didn't always, but the astrology is telling me, and I've stepped into it, with all my kind of self-care and letting go of old stories and trauma, and really kind of letting go of this kind of mindset that I cannot do this has changed my life, and I can only see it expanding. So on May the 18th, Jupiter's nearly finishing its journey, his journey, their journey, whatever, in the sign of Gemini. And Jupiter has moved to 25 degrees Gemini and will square the nodes. By that point, the nodes have moved back into Pisces and Virgo, the practical mystic, I always call that kind of thing. This is meaning with trust as well. And Saturn is about to leave the sign of Pisces, that we've worked on our limiting beliefs. This is a big turning point, Jupiter to square the nodes. This is saying, have faith and believe and create and make meaningful what you want to create. This is a powerful conjunction as well, or square rather. On May the 20th, Jupiter's going to come up and will sextile Eris, one of my favorites. So really, it's all happening kind of at the same time. Jupiter square the nodes, still at 25 degrees, 25 degrees. Jupiter's going to sextile Eris and Chiron at the same time. On really kind of all this is happening together. It's May the 18th to May the 20th of next year. We've been working on Chiron, healing our part in playing, finding ourselves. The focus has moved to doing the work on ourselves rather than trying to change everybody else, okay? Trying to change everybody else individually, and then coming from that place of wholeness and shaking and being more whole, we can shake things up. Or it's also positive to my mind. And anyway, that's a big time around changing, squaring the nodes and aspecting Chiron and Eris, saying it's time to really shake tables. We've been given permission slips. That keeps coming up for me. I'm giving you a permission slip to go, I've got this, and we are being given permission slip as a collective to really enact what we want to do. I notice at the same time, Jupiter is in trine to Pallas Athena and Hecate. They've now moved into Aquarius, the sign of the future, saying we can create something that's better for the people, and create more egalitarian structures and systems. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Let me just check. There's no more these are the last aspects of Jupiter being in the sign of Gemini, because then Jupiter will move into the sign of Cancer, and I'll be doing another video for you at that point with Jupiter in Cancer. But let's have a look at what's happening when Jupiter finishes in Cancer. By then, Uranus is finishing up their journey in Taurus for the first time, because Uranus will move into Gemini and dip back and forth into Taurus. And by that time, Saturn and Neptune will have met both moved into Aries and will be conjunct at the very first degree of Aries. So just wow, we'll have had some major changes, and we'll be having soon be having a minor grand trine between Pluto and Neptune and Uranus. Big changes coming from that. There's a lot more else I could say, but I'm not going to, because it's already long enough. But we are moving into a really great time of healing and expansion, and of change of direction and perspectives and views. And wherever it is in your chart is going to be a big time. I think this Jupiter in Gemini transit is just massive because it's following so close to the conjunction, the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus that we had on April the 20th. Okay, it's connecting with the nodes and squaring the nodes at later in the transit, which is really important too. That's always a big turning point. Big changes coming. I know we don't like change, but I really kind of see them as positive changes overall. No definitive predictions other than I really do intuit it that, you know, the women's reproductive issue is going to have people out in droves. And even if people do object to certain policies and things, I also think Jupiter in Gemini may say, okay, we've got to look at all the factors, all the filing, and say what's best for the collective, and people will kind of swallow, you know, and just say we've got to pick the kind of best one. So I'm actually going to pull a card, and I pulled this card fell out, so I think this one wants to be heard for that period, just to kind of give you a bit of hope. And this is from the Tree Devia deck, and I did not take photographs, so I'm just going to hold them back here. Actually, maybe I will take a photograph so I don't get any fuzzy camera, because the people were like, your camera goes fuzzy, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like they were, buy a good camera, and I'm like, have one. But anyway, I know it's because I was holding the cards right close to the camera, so it would lose focus and struggle to find it again. Bear with me, this card, and then I will read them, and then we're done. But honestly, you know, maybe there's a transcript. We've done this as well. You know, go back through some of the dates and note them. Really look where these aspects are in your chart. I do think we should all understand at least the basics of where things are on our charts, because everything is based on your own unique chart. That's why I don't like doing all signs forecasts, because it's a bit general for me. But anyway, these are the cards for this. I'm just gonna, there we go. So three of wands, first of all, and then two of swords. And this is the Tree Devia deck. There's a discount link if you like the deck. If you buy with my link, you get a discount. I'm actually being interviewed in an hour after I record this by the creator of the Tree Devia deck. So I will be sharing that with you as well, that interview on her podcast whenever it's out. I don't know when it will be. But anyway, so the upright version of Three of Wands, that is fire. Jupiter really is fiery. It's time to think big. You're ready for a life-changing adventure. You may be given an opportunity to travel somewhere far away, either in physicality or in the mind, I'm going to say. And it's time to venture to unknown places to discover more about yourself and learn many new things along the way. Optimism and joy are what you're feeling right now, and you have good reason for that. You're free as a bird, and the world is at your feet. So the affirmation for that is, I am ready to experience life to the fullest, and I open myself to new adventures. There's an affirmation for you. Now then, we've also got for this whole period, Two of Swords. And swords is the mind. This says you have choices in front of you, and you may feel indecisive right now, whilst reviewing your options. Remember that your intuition and gut feelings exist for a reason. That's her tuning into her higher self, okay? They are a way in which your higher self, this as you weigh your options, a decision, um, in which your higher self communicates with you. Don't delay making a decision as there isn't a perfect option. You should simply choose with the intention that it's the best and don't look back. So the affirmation for this is, I trust my higher self to guide me in the direction that is best in all ways. Okay. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm sorry. Well, it's aspecting everything in my chart, and the station retrograde is opposing my sun, and the station direct is on my moon, and we do have a Gemini star point as well at 14 Gemini with Jupiter conjunct Mercury coming up on June the 4th. This is going to be quite an amazing journey. But I would take those cards to heart. There's no perfect decision. Don't sit there vacillating, going which way, which way. Trust your higher intuition and take big leaps. Much love. Mwah, mwah, mwah. And don't forget to subscribe and thumbs up and leave me a comment. And can you tell Jupiter's move into Gemini is exciting me? Can you tell? I love you. I'll see you next time. Bye.